Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
105.9 FM, WMAL.
It's 8:07 on the Morning Majority. Wilson, Neiman, and Ham, we're all here. We've been talking a lot this morning about the President's State of the Union address last night. We don't often get to ask the President's questions, but occasionally our friend Josh Earnest, the White House Deputy Press Secretary, drops by so we can ask him the questions that we would like to ask of the President. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Doing well. Hey, listen, the President made the case last night that rich people don't pay enough in taxes and that somehow the system as it exists today is sort of unfair to the poor, but the facts are that the wealthiest 1% of this country pay 29.5% of all federal taxes, and roughly 50% of Americans currently pay no federal taxes. And I guess my question to you, Josh, is how is it unfair to poor people when they get government services, government benefits, some get welfare? How is it unfair when they get all of that and they don't pay a penny into the system? Seems pretty fair to me.
Well, the point that the President made last night is that what the President believes is unfair is that he does not believe that it is fair for some millionaires and billionaires to pay a lower tax rate than middle-class families.
But the wealthiest 1% are paying 30% of the federal taxes, Josh.
Yeah, I understand that. But what I'm telling you is that there are millionaires and billionaires out there that are currently paying a lower tax rate than middle-class families. That's not fair. Well, that's what the President said. And that's what the President believes. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, what are we going to do given our difficult financial situation, given the investments that we need to make, given the significant deficit problems that we have? Are we going to try to protect those tax benefits that allows millionaires and billionaires to pay an even lower rate than middle?
But Josh,
millionaires and billionaires pay an even lower rate than
the question that I would have is,
or are we going to make cuts in investments that are critical to the future of our country?
Here's the question I would have: why does this administration, Josh?
And that's the choice that the President believes is actually a pretty good one.
Let me ask my question. Why does this?
That would make a big difference.
Why does this administration
have? Do a long wind up on your first question.
Oh, come on, Josh.
Do that. I got out one sentence and you started interrupting me.
Why does
we can have a conversation.
I'm trying to have a conversation, Josh.
You got to let me answer.
Why does this administration have as one of its basic tenets that successful people are somehow gaming the system? It seems to me that
that's not a central.
Well, no, they really are making that case that they don't do enough. They're not paying enough taxes, and somehow they're getting a big benefit.
Go ahead.
And so why do you make the case that successful people are gaming the system somehow and not doing enough, when I think the argument can be made that the people who are paying nothing are really gaming the system?
I watched the speech from beginning to end yesterday, and as I assume many of your listeners did, and the President didn't even come close to saying that. So we can have a debate about what the President talked about, or we can have a debate about something else.
Well, let me ask you this.
The President actually made the case that we need to expand opportunity to people in this country so that everybody has the opportunity to be successful.
Josh,
that's what he believes the American dream is all about.
Let me ask you this. You asked, what are we going to do? I ask, what are you going to do in the administration? This Buffett rule, it's not in the budget that the President is going to introduce, apparently. It's not written into any sort of legislation. The President has passed on the opportunity to do broad tax reform. He had, from his own commission, some suggestions on how he could tackle that. Does not make this just a political point. It's just a way to lambaste people. And also, if you're going to do it, you'd have to raise the capital gains tax to 30% because that's how people are getting away with paying less.
Well, I do think that it's difficult, even in this circumstance, difficult to criticize the President's budget before he's rolled it out.
Well, it'll be late, too, so I can criticize it for that. But go ahead.
If you're looking for a reason to, you can. But what I would suggest that you and your fair-minded listeners should consider doing is actually taking a look at the President's budget when it's rolled out in mid-February and take a look and decide whether or not those priorities are the priorities that you agree with. What I think that budget will reflect, it will reflect the President's commitment to making sure that we have the kind of economy that reflects the values that underpin the founding of this country.
But if the Buffett rule is
for everybody,
right,
a fair share for everybody, and ensuring that everybody's doing their part and playing by the same rules.
And if the Buffett rule is key to that, you should have a plan for accomplishing it. What is the plan for accomplishing it?
Well, as the President laid out yesterday, he said that he believes that it's important for millionaires, people who make more than $1 million in a single year, that they pay a minimum rate of 30% in taxes.
But to say you believe something is important is not a way to get it done.
I understand. That's why the President spoke to a joint session of Congress I understand there were 535 members of Congress, everybody in the Senate, and everybody in the House. The president laid out a plan, offered up his suggestions for what they should do. It is the responsibility of the Congress to pass legislation that involves the tax code. So he asked them to do that, and he laid out specifically what he wanted them to do.
We heard last night a lot of things about the taxation right to fair share. We heard about immigration reform, that it needs to be done. We heard about helping people refinance. Some of those themes we heard in 2009, actually. We heard them all in 2009, 2010, and last year. So does that mean that the administration has failed in those, quests? You haven't got the taxation that you wanted. Has nothing been done on immigration, and really nothing much has been done on helping people with their mortgages.
We have made some progress in a number of those areas, but you're right that the president believes strongly that there is a lot of work to be done, and there is a strong tendency among people here in Washington D.C. to say, well, you know what, it's an election year. We're never really going to get anything done. We should just wait till after the election to start dealing with these difficult challenges. That's not something that the president agrees with. The president believes that he was elected to be president of the United States, to serve for 4 years, and to represent the interests of the American people, and not just to put off the difficult decisions until after the election. So hopefully Democrats and Republicans will join him in that effort. And there's some important things that we can get done early this year before we get deep into the muck of the re-election campaign.
I'm going to ask you a policy question, too, because the president talked about the changing mortgage and helping millions of people refinance. Is that going to be a bill that will have to be passed by Congress, or is that something that can be done without the approval of Congress? How will that work?
Yeah, there are a couple of proposals that the president talked about last night. One of them was to give an opportunity for everybody to take advantage of the historically low interest rates and refinance. That is something that's a measure that would have to be passed by Congress. So that was something that he said that he wanted Congress to work on, and he vowed to work on that with them. There are a couple of other things the president said he would do, including the appointment of a financial task force to investigate some of the misdeeds that led to this, the crisis in the housing market. And that's something that the president can obviously do with his administrative powers, and that's something that I believe that they're going to get started working on today.
Couldn't he have done that any time during the last 3 years? The federal government can prosecute people for committing crimes in the financial sector. Why do we need FCU to do it? Which, by the way, sounds like a great SBU sequel.
It does, right? I assume that there's probably some good, Dick Wolf theme music that goes along with it. The president obviously doesn't direct prosecutions, but what he can do is he can actually sort of task specific parts of the Department of Justice to take a look at this. This is an effort that actually includes some state attorneys general who've been looking at this at the state level. So Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General of New York, has been heavily involved in this issue. So this is actually an effort to try to combine some resources and try to leverage some additional investigative resources into taking a close look.
Josh, I heard the president say last night during his speech that people like him need to pay more taxes. What's stopping him? He can pay more tax. He can write a check.
Right. This is sort of back to where we started. The president believes that we're all in this together, right? This is not an effort to try to divide people. This is an effort to sort of demonstrate that when this country is at our best and when we're going to be our strongest and if we're going to succeed, we're all in this together and we all need to sort of do our fair share, but we all need to have the opportunity to get a fair shot. And if we do that, that is sort of the founding principle of this country, and it's what the president believes we need to do to strengthen our economy and get our economy back on track.
But he could set an example, I'm just saying. Okay, well, thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, guys, thanks for the opportunity.